Sunday morning, we're in Newtown. It's the Viking Motorsport Links Electrical Supplies Mid-Wales stages. Let's get started.
Round 2 of the West Wales Rally Spares RAC Rally Championship dawned in damp conditions as 52 stage miles lay ahead of the crews in the Welsh forests. 75 cars would take the start across 5 categories based on age and engine size, with Minis and Lotus Cortinas taking on Alfa Romeos and Volvos in Category 1. The Lotus Cortinas of Bob Bean and Simon Wallace were amongst the first to be flagged away by the Mayor of Newtown, and coming into this round of the championship, Richard Hill heading the title race by 20 points from Chris Brown. He's just 1 point up on Terry Brown, with Ray Cunningham, Leighton Waters and Tom Coftree all tied for 4th ahead of Tom Davis, with Simon Wallace, Peter Smith and Roger Matthews rounding out the top 10. And this weekend, the championship remembering David Winstanley, who passed away just a few days before the event. The first cars in action, those in the Walker Diecasting's Pre-68 division, Category 1. There's been a massive boost in numbers for this category for this year. The cars running first on the road in deference to their age. And Simon Wallace and Graham Ryde in the Alan Mann liveried Cortina set the pace on the Pikes Peak opening stage of the day. A 9-mile test on classic Wales Rally GB route. The Cortina was fastest on the opening stage, 6 seconds quicker than the opposition, with Wallace well into his stride. The Cortina's light and powerful and ever spectacular to watch, but Wallace wouldn't have it all his own way on this second round of the championship. Gwilym Roberts and Don James in their Cortina would take the fight to Wallace and Ryde. The Welsh crew had a great run on the red kite stages, but they had big brake problems. They finished this stage just 10 seconds down on Simon Wallace, with more potential to come as the battle continued between the Cortinas. The opening stage of the day was a real test for everybody. It was wet, it was slippery. Drivers were desperately hunting for traction as well as trying to set a decent time early in the day. But while the battle built up between the two Cortinas, there was plenty more to factor into this second round of the championship. Step forward the Minis, amongst them the car of Ray Cunningham and Gary McElhinney from Galway. Galway Mini Centre sponsored car, second fastest on the opening stage of the event, and Cunningham, bear in mind, is normally a star on asphalt rather than gravel. Cunningham tackling only his second ever gravel rally. Bear in mind that his first was the opening round of the championship. He won that on a tie-break, the only time a tie-break has been used in the championship. It was an astonishing effort, and he'd certainly become a man to watch on this event as well. Ever spectacular, the pendulum-tailed Volvo Amazon in the hands of Graham Waite, with Jill Kaufman sat alongside. The Volvo, and Graham and Jill, new to the championship this year. The car, a big, heavy beast, but it copes well with the gravel stages. Disappointingly, early in the day, the car wouldn't run as cleanly as he wanted it to. That meant they were down in 4th place at the end of the opening test. Bob Bean and Malcolm Smithson came next in their Cortina. Yorkshire legend Bean tackling this event just a week before his 75th birthday. And the Yorkshire legend as quick as ever. It was his first visit to the Welsh forests for 7 years. He'd been tempted back by the strength of the entry, but disappointingly he had problems. The steering gave way after just 3 tests. The car was an early retirement. That took one of the Lotus Cortinas out of the battle. But step forward, the Cortina Mark II GT in the hands of Bob Gibbons, with his son Dale sitting alongside him. Bob Gibbons, the man from South Wales, hustling the car on as rapidly as ever. The downside to the spectacular Mark II Cortina being it isn't as powerful or as light as the Lotus Cortinas. What it lacks in those departments, it has to make up for in driver commitment. Adding more welcome variety to Category 1, the Ford Anglia in the hands of Peter Stimson. Co-driven by Mark Butler, Devonian Peter back in rallying after a year away. And although the Ford Anglia runs on a tight budget, it's a very well-prepared car. What else would you expect from an RAC patrolman? That's what Stimson does during the week. At weekends, he's a very quick rally driver indeed. The 1500cc Ford Anglia, perhaps a little breathless against the later, more modern, more powerful Lotus Cortinas, for example. But in Stimson's hands early on in the day, the car was flying, despite very slippery stages. It's also a car that's very popular with the fans, and Stimson was going strongly. Another car running in the Alden Automotive Mini and Imp Cup is this Mini in the hands of Frank Cunningham, with Aaron Ford sat alongside him. Frank, the older brother of Ray, splits his time between living in Ireland and America. When he comes back to this part of the world, he's a very rapid rally driver indeed. Cunningham back behind the wheel of a Mini after a spell in a Ford Escort and indeed a Porsche, but he retired in Hafren on the third stage of the event. He slid wide, he went off onto a bank, there was nobody around to give him a shove to get him back on the road. It was a disappointing way to end an event that started with bags of promise. When the Mini was going, however, it was going very strongly indeed. Yet another quick Cunningham to factor in to this year's championship. And how different does it get in Category 1? From a Mini to a Volvo. The PV544, one of the oldest cars in the field, dating back to 1960, driven by Ian Beveridge, Peter Joy sitting alongside in the co-driver's seat. It's the type of car made famous by Tom Trana. It's a real throwback to the early days of the sport. Ian Beveridge, an ex-Metro 6R4 driver, so this very different indeed. And Peter Joy, somebody who is to be found rallying a Lotus Elite on tarmac road rallies. The Volvo up against the Cortinas. Not an easy ask of the big car, but it was going strongly and quickly on the opening stages of the day. Another car competing in the Mini and Imp Cup for this year is this Mini Cooper S in the hands of Clive King and Russell Joseph. This new competition aimed to encourage out the smaller cars such as the Mini and the Imp, and the concept is working well as the entry has grown for this second round of the championship. Clive King, a real Mini stalwart, but for 2014 he's got tough opposition from Ray Cunningham. Early in the day, the Mini looking a little bit smoky, that perhaps a legacy of an engine failure on the opening event of the championship, the Red Kite Stages. The engine has been rebuilt, but perhaps burning just a little bit of oil early on in the morning. Despite that, Clive King going quickly. By the end of the opening test, the battle was developing nicely between the Minis. And if you wanted further proof of the variety in Category 1, well, look no further. The Porsche 911 in the hands of Paul Mankin and Desmond Bell next on stage. Paul, the Newcastle upon Tyne driver, in just his second outing in this car that Derek Boyd drove for the last couple of seasons. Paul Mankin switching to a Porsche after seasons spent behind the wheel of a Lotus Cortina, so he readily admits he's still getting used to the car, but stage by stage, getting faster and faster and increasingly confident behind the wheel. It's also a car that's a big hit with the fans, that distinctive Porsche engine note, the tail wagging on the slippery opening tests. The car getting faster and faster on the early part of the day. And for even more variety, step forward John Everard and Mark Sharpley in the JD Garage equipment-backed Alfa Romeo 1600 GT Junior. You don't find many Alfa Romeos competing in rallying, even fewer in historic rallying. But this car looks and sounds fantastic, and it's another one that's a real hit with the fans. John has worked incredibly hard to make this car not just quick but reliable as well, and all that hard work paying off. The car dancing through the opening tests of the day, working its way into contention, and being fast and reliable to boot. Whilst Alfa Romeo's heritage may not really include all that much success in rallying, Saab's definitely does. Stephen Higgins and Don Bramfoot with the two-stroke Saab 96 were next onto the stages, the distinctive engine note howling its way through the forests. The car a real throwback to the early days of Forest rallying and Eric Carlson, for example, and for Manx-based Higgins, a quick driver in his own right, the Saab just a little breathless, particularly going up a hill. The message seemed to be, if anything looks steep, don't lift, just keep your foot nailed to the boards. When the road was a little flatter, the speed was there, but the Saab going strongly on the opening stage of the day on Pikes Peak. It was going to be a car to watch as the rally unfolded. We've seen the Minis in the Mini and Imp Cup. What about the Imps? Well, let's start with something a little different. A Poshin, the Singer Chamois. Chris Twos and Joe Twos behind the wheel of this car, the husband and wife combination, in their second season of running with the Imp. Chris himself, an ex-Mitsubishi driver, but he has this passion for the smaller cars, Imps in particular. Disappointingly, electrical gremlins halted his progress on the second stage of the day. They had to stop and change a condenser. Disappointing after having gone very strongly on the first stage of the event. The number of these cars appearing on the event as well, proof that the Mini was a very good concept. The entry was looking very strong indeed. Opposition within it, however, would come from Jeff Taylor and Steve Greenhill with their Sunbeam Imp Sport. Jeff Taylor, an experienced driver, he's been rallying for quite a few seasons now, but he had problems on the first loop of stages, and disappointingly, the car ground to a halt. It was a real shame because early in the day the car had been going and sounding very rapid indeed. What he had done though was lay down a marker for the remainder of the season, but if this car holds together it's going to be a real factor amongst the hordes of Imps giving energetic chase to the Minis. The Capital Construction sponsored Category 2 caters for cars built between 1968 and 1974, and numerically it's dominated by BDA engine Ford Escort Mark 1s or Pinto engine Mark 1 Escorts, and David Stokes and Guy Weaver the crew to beat. The pair, hugely experienced, David Stokes himself has been rallying since the late 60s, but making his debut in the West Wales Rally Spares RAC Rally Championship. He was always going to be the benchmark driver in Category 2, and it was no surprise to find him fastest on SS1. Opposition to Stokes and Weaver would come from Stanley Orr and Brian Cairns from Northern Ireland. Now bear in mind, their car was in Class C3, so it's a Pinto engined Escort, less powerful than that of David Stokes, and Stanley Orr hasn't rallied in Wales for over 30 years. He was going incredibly well, and he was only 18 seconds down on Stokes after the first 9-mile test. It was a mighty achievement. It also set down a marker for the rest of the day. Stanley Orr straight away had proved he was going to be a man to watch. Chris Brown and his wife, Ali Cornwell Brown, were also escort mounted, and they were aiming to chase David Stokes in Class C5. Chris Brown drove extremely well on the opening stage. He was only 11 seconds down at the end of the opening test. The Kent builder was going strongly, and the husband and wife combination looking good within Category 2. The car was barely in a straight line, the back wagging its way through the forest stages and in the hunt for honours in Category 2. They were being pushed by Warren Philliskirk and Uric Evans in their BDA engine escort. Warren, an experienced Yorkshireman in a fresh car for this year. This its first outing in the championship after a shakedown on the Riponian stages back in February. For something different, how about the Datsun 240Z, the car owned by Mike Reynolds. He was co-driving for Jeremy Eason, his near neighbour and his mate behind the wheel of the car. Jeremy, somebody who liked rallying unusual cars, and the ex-escort man was ideally suited to the Datsun 240Z. It was another car that was a big hit with the fans. It made a great noise, the back pendulumed its way around the slippery stages, and although perhaps it didn't have the pace of the escorts, it was holding its own over the opening test.
Into right
Better
one,
to look at Category 3,
into left one plus,
and
right one, 40, don't cut right 3 into hairpin left plus.
Category 3, backed by Rob Smith Rallying, is for cars built up to the end of 1981, so it's the perfect home for Ford Escort Mark IIs with either a BDG or a Pinto engine. Nick Elliott and Dave Price had won this event 3 times in the last 4 years, but were coming back from a big crash at the end of the red kite stages, where they went off on the very last test of the event and effectively threw away a win that, understandably, had made Nick Elliott a little nervous heading into round 2 of the championship.
That one's 70. Left 2 continues for 100, tightens, 60, left 5 over crest into hairpin right. Left 4 plus.
The Robinson Road planing Ford Escort was being hustled on in the hands of Matt Robinson, with Sam Collis sat alongside him. A relatively new combination. They're getting quicker and quicker all the time, helped by a huge amount of seat time. For example, they've been doing a lot of rallying on the build-up to this event, winning 2 events in 3 weeks. The lessons learned were being put to good use, and the Mark II Escort was flying early doors around the Welsh forests despite the slippery road, and they were taking the battle to Elliott and Price. A man to watch this year is Marion Evans. Sitting alongside him is Ewan Evans, but Marion, new to historic rallying, a multiple former Welsh road rally champion, and he's taken to this discipline of the sport like the proverbial duck to water. He's quick, spectacular, he's got a very good car underneath him, a very good co-driver sat alongside, and being helped in his driving by Julian Reynolds, noted as a historic rally Ford Escort master. That help from Julian Reynolds was paying dividends early in the day as the car danced its way across the stages, and this was another Escort up at the pointy end of the battle in Category 3. In contrast to newcomer Evans, the very experienced Terry Brown had Den Golding sitting alongside him. Terry now in his 70s with his self-prepared Ford Escort. He works very hard on his rallying. It's all done on a budget. And disappointingly, the event wouldn't be a long one nor a successful one for him, because he would retire in Sweet Lamb with damaged suspension early in the day. battle for honours would lose one of normally the quicker Ford Escort Mark IIs. Big disappointment for Terry Brown. It's going to affect him in the championship, but rest assured he'll bounce back for the next round. For years, Category 3 has been all about the Ford Escort Mark IIs, but here in Wales, things were changing. The ex-Russell Brooks Talbot Sunbeam Lotus of Owen Murphy and James O'Brien, running in period livery, was getting faster and faster and faster. The Sunbeam taking the battle to the Ford Escorts. Owen Murphy has a great pedigree back home in Ireland, but virtually all the stages he tackles in the UK are completely new to him, completely alien, and therefore the fact that he was 5th fastest on the opening stage behind the Ford Escort was a mighty achievement. Already some of the Escort drivers are getting nervous. The Sunbeam was quick, it just gets faster and faster as 2014 unfolds. Jason Pritchard has the reigning champion co-driver sat alongside him in Phil Clark, who won the title last year when he was sitting next to Martin McCormack. Jason Pritchard was in his first event since he rolled out of the Roger Albert Clark rally in November of last year. And this car, a rare left-hand drive Ford Escort, bought from France just 10 days before the event started. Disappointingly though, despite the effort put in by the team to actually get into the event itself, they wouldn't be rewarded with anything like a good result because the half shaft broke in half run and they were out of the event. Another of the quick Escort Mark II crews is Thomas Davis and Uric Davis. Always in contention, always there or thereabouts. They were very fast on the opening loop of stages, running with no problems. Their Escort may not have been setting the ultimate pace of Nick Elliott, for example, but it was always there, threatening to gain ground as the event wore on, and Escort would never be discounted. Experienced Yorkshireman Darren Moon had a new co-driver, Alan Walker, sitting alongside him. Alan normally to be found behind the wheel of his own Escort Mark II. Business commitments mean that car is parked up for the moment, and in a rare moment of generosity, he suggested he might co-drive for the weekend. Darren took him up on the offer, and despite all the jibes about a driver being a hopeless co-driver and getting lost and having a really bad day, the pair gelled as a combination. It actually worked extremely well, and this was another Escort up at the pointy end of the Category 3 battle at the end of the opening loop of stages. Tim Freeman had Paul Wakely sat alongside him with the BDG-engined Ford Escort Mark II. This a car contesting the Kuho Clubman's Challenge. That runs within the overall championship, and it's a 6-tyre competition. That means it's only open to those crews doing an event on just 6 tyres alone. Now, the Ford Escort Mark II is notoriously tough on tyres, and the fact that Tim Freeman is not just contesting that championship, but also doing a very good job within it, underlines that he's a very good driver. Sean Rayner had Declan Deere sitting alongside him, and he was setting the pace in Class D3 for the Pinto engine cars. Not only that, he was also getting up in and amongst some of the slower BDG engine Escort Mark IIs. It was a really good effort being turned in by Rayner and Deere, and proof of just how hard they were trying came at the hairpins. Despite running a little bit wide, he was able to get back the time lost and still hustled on. So after the first 20 miles of the event and the first 2 stages, Wallace and Ryde headed Roberts and James and then Cunningham in Category 1. Category 2 was being headed by David Stokes ahead of Stanley Orr, whilst Category 3 for the Escort Mark IIs was being slugged out at the head of the leaderboard by Nick Elliott, and he in turn was being chased by Robinson and then Evans. For the crews though, they'd had a very busy and a very slippery morning in the forests.
We're
couple of stages are really good. I'm finding it's better to hold it in a lower gear, so I'm getting more out of it. So even though I'm old as I am, I'm still learning stuff. You never end up learning, you know. Cars are a bit different from day to day as well, you know. So it's a little bit better today than
Temperamental lady.
Yeah, a little bit better than the red kite. We were struggling with handling stuff.
It's good going downhill, not uphill. Suits the car going downhill. Pulling up on the first stage was horrendous for us.
Really?
Yeah, really slow with the two-stroke, but the rest of it fantastic.
Yeah.
Loved it.
So looking forward to the rest of the day.
Can't wait.
Yeah, very slippy. Really eye-opener and awakener.
Happy to be in one piece.
Yeah, we're very lucky. Some places are really atrocious.
Yeah.
Not much grip anywhere, really.
Wow.
Still, very enjoyable stages though.
Yeah, all right. Straightforward. I haven't actually seen any results at all, so I've no idea where we are. But no, the car's been going well. Shipping a bit of water here and there, and a bit of mud on the inside of the screen, but otherwise, yeah, not too bad.
The stage is fantastic. They're in great condition. They're very slippery in places, pretty wet, but yeah, they just, you know, for the weather they've had here the last couple of months, they're unbelievable, as they always are. Great stages.
Not the best of starts. We picked the car up last Friday from France. It's a tarmac car and it's fuel injected, and all the revs are high end. You know, you can't use anything low down, and in these conditions you need to be up the gears and using the torque, and this car doesn't have any, so we're losing a bucket load of time because of that. But we just have to suck it and see it and see how we get on.
And I think we were fastest on out of all the Cat 1 historics. By about 10 seconds, I think, on the first stage. So that was good start. Went into the second stage, and it just started losing a bit of power. And by the time we got to the end, there was smoke everywhere, and apparently it's dropped a valve. So, which is a shame, because I think we were leading by 10 in the end and 17 over the BHRC boys. So I was really pleased, and I was dead chuffed with the tyres as well, because we've never used DMAT before, and the grip was absolutely excellent.
Yeah, good fun. I had to back off in the last one there. I adjusted the timing in between the stages manually, and I went the wrong way. So she wouldn't go over 6.5, but I would just, sort of stage you could kind of just keep it flowing, hopefully it didn't drop too much time. Fabulous stages, even though they're wet, slippy, but it's lovely.
After service, we're going back to the stages. Welcome back to the West Wales Rally Spares RAC Rally Championship and Category 1. Hafren was the longest stage of the rally at 16 miles long, and it started in Sweet Lamb before moving to Hafren itself. With the demise of Simon Wallace, Ray Cunningham was now the man to beat.
Fast medium right now. 40, fast right, 80, mid over bump junction to fast medium left, down into the fast medium left, 40, mid through the post, and mid over junction 150. Easy left, into a mid over small crest, 80 past the quarry. Caution, crest, slowing for square right narrow. Yeah. Crest, slowing, square right narrow. Hear it? Square right and narrow. Into a medium left, narrow. Medium left, past medium right. Don't cut. 6 left. Hairpin right, hairpin right, here left. Oh, lovely. 40. Easy left through the post, and a fast medium right. Tightens logs, don't cut, and a 6 left. Repeat, 6 left, don't cut it. 80 over small crest, with an easy left, and a K left, don't cut. 80, 6 right long, continues for 80, 6 right long, continues for 80, and tightens 60, to the mid over crest, 40 to the K left.
Graham Waite was moving up the order after the dramas for Simon Wallace. Waite and Gwilla Roberts in the Cortina are now the main opposition to Ray Cunningham in Category 1. Bob Gibbons was setting the pace in Class B3 for the 1600cc Category 1 cars. He was chasing Roberts and Waite. Wyn Jones, with his Ford Cortina GT, however, was losing pace, and he was being caught by Peter Stimpson's Ford Anglia. That meant the Anglia had taken nearly a minute out of the Cortina on that stage alone. Clive King inherited second behind Ray Cunningham in Oldham Automotive Mini and Imp Cup after the retirement of Frank Cunningham. And for Ian Beveridge, it was a case of steady as she goes in the Volvo PV544. Beveridge, as he's rallying around his international motor racing duties for a tyre manufacturer, was having a good run on the slippery stages. Paul Mankin was still adapting to the Porsche, but going strongly. John Everard, delectable Alfa Romeo, suffered from a couple of spins in the Haffron Forest, but he was still in the top 10. Stephen Higgins, though, lost 7 minutes in Haffron after a throttle spring made a bid for freedom. The car went off into a ditch, and first of all they had to find not only enough people to get the car out of the ditch, but then a replacement spring as well. Bob Bean's rally, however, would end on SS3 with mechanical dramas, and it would also be the end of Frank Cunningham when he slid off the road. David Stokes consolidated his lead in Category 2, was increasing his advantage over the opposition. By the end of Haffron, he led by over 50 seconds. Stanley Orr was the best of the rest on the alien stages, having a trouble-free run in his Ford Escort. Warren Philliskirk was down to 4th and was losing time to Orr and Chris Brown in the fight for 2nd place, although 18 minutes of rallying in Haffron was a tough test of anyone. Chris Brown had moved himself up to 3rd and was chasing Orr. He was just 5 seconds slower than Orr after the 16-mile test. Pete Smith's Swift Leisure-backed Opel Ascona was a new project for this year and was 2nd to Orr in Class C3. The experienced and busy Patrick Walsh was sitting alongside. But Jeremy Eason was heading for retirement as a broken diff mounting spelt the end for the Datsun 240Z. Terry Cree and Richard Shaw's added variety to the class. Their Class C3 BMW 2002 these days a match for the Escorts. Steve Magson and Darren Smith in their Pinto engine Escort Mark 1 were slugging it out with the BMW in C3. And so too was David Kirby with Chris Rixon in their Ford Escort Pinto. David, one of only 2 drivers to have finished each and every round of the championship. Phil Jobson and Arwell Jenkins were having their first outing since a big roll on the Roger Albert Clark in November. It was a rare foray to Wales for the Cumbrian driver who just wanted a finish. Chris Nixon and Bryn Moore-Pierce were making their championship debut after several seasons away. Mark 1 Escort going well. The leading 1600cc Class C2 Escort was in the hands of Robin Shuttleworth and Ronnie Roughhead. Phil Jobson continued his solid run in his Escort Mark 1, affectionately known as Snowy given the registration plate, a car once rallied and rolled by Noel Edmonds in Ipit. Nick Elliott headed Category 3 and was flying in Haffron to extend his lead by a further 8 seconds. After 3 stages, he was 28 seconds up. Matt Robinson was a strong 2nd and was enjoying a measured, error-free run. Marion Evans was 2nd fastest to Elliott in Haffron, a tremendous effort given his lack of experience at this level. Owen Murphy's Sunbeam was still on the attack and moved up a place after Terry Brown's retirement. Thomas Davis moved up 2 places after Brown and Jason Pritchard retired, and he was hunting down Owen Murphy. Championship leaders Richard Hill and Stephen Evans had dropped over a minute on the opening leg after what Hill described as pilot error, but he was back on the money in Haffron, matching the pace of the leaders. Darren Moon was waning in Haffron, losing time to Thomas Davis, but picked up pace on SS4, leaving himself with work to do on the final leg. Tim Freeman was chasing Moon though for a place in the top 6 overall. Championship sponsor Gareth Lloyd, along with Ryland James, was running in the top 10 in his ex-Roger Clark John Taylor Escort Mark II. In Class D3, Sean Rayner was consolidating his lead, pulling away from the opposition. Jerry Bailey, along with Graham Lacey, were back after a roll on the red kite stages. The aim this weekend to finish. Phil and Mick Squires in their rally and competition equipment backed Ford Escort, always quick, always consistent. The mid-Wales stages was no exception. Gareth Lewis and Dan Holly were chasing Sean Rayner in the battle of the Class D3 Escorts. Another Sunbeam Lotus in the event was in the hands of Guy Anderson and Kim Baker, and they would retire on the final stage of the event. Adrian Young and Winford Jones were also in Class D3, hunting down Gareth Lewis for second. Poor old Mike Tompkinson and Sean Whitehurst were suffering from a low seeding, and they spent much of their day catching slower cars and losing time as a result. Ben Friend and Sean Kennedy were also Class D3 Escort mounted. Friend, the youngest driver in the event, headed the under-25 class. James State and Mike Harris had the third Sunbeam Lotus on the event and were enjoying a good, solid run. Tom Coftry and Calvin Coolidge have a car prepared in Devon, giving Scotsman Coftry a few logistical jitters. Their Escort runs in Category K, as it complies with the FIA Appendix K regulations. Graham Thatcher, Robert James were ploughing on in their Hillman Avenger, leading Class D2 for the 1600cc Category 3 cars. Nick Jarvis and Craig Forming were having their first run in a newly built Escort Mark II and dealing with a number of new car teething troubles. Dave Watkins and Tony Vard had a 1600cc Talbot Sunbeam in Class D2, Dave's second event after a 25-year break. The Escort Mark II of Paul Fry and Mike Steele was a long way back after dropping 7 minutes early in the day with mechanical dramas on the opening stage. Four stages in, Category 1 was headed by Ray Cunningham from Gwilym Roberts and then Graham Waite, Bob Gibbons 4th and Peter Stimson running in 5th. Category 2 was all about David Stokes as he continued to lead Stanley Orr with Warren Philliskirk back up to 3rd ahead of Chris Brown and Peter Smith lying 5th. And Nick Elliott remained the man to beat in Category 3 as he fended off Matt Robinson and Marion Evans with Owen Murphy 4th and Thomas Davis in 5th spot. Ray Cunningham entered the final stage aiming for victory. On the 8-mile test from Meherin to Pikes Peak, the Mini was outpowered and was only 4th fastest, but Cunningham was still the Category 1 winner by over half a minute. Like everybody, Gwilym Roberts had to contend with worsening weather, but he was able to cope with the conditions extremely well. He was 3rd fastest on the final stage and 2nd to Cunningham in Category 1. Cortina charged its way to the final hairpin on the event, downhill at Pikes Peak, the first time the corner had ever been used as a downhill hairpin on any rally. The star of the final stage, however, was Graham Waite with the Volvo Amazon. Hurled the mighty car around in fine style, and that ultimately put him 3rd overall in Category 1, fastest on the final stage, and he would slot in behind Cunningham and Roberts. Also impressive on the final stage of the event was Bob Gibbons. He was 2nd fastest away on that final stage and won his class, Class B3. 4th in Category 1 was his ultimate reward. Another hero over the event had been Peter Stimson with the Ford Anglia. He took second in B3 behind Bob Gibbons, who pulled away on the last stage, but fifth for the 1500cc Ford Angle box was a mighty effort. Clive King's Mini was second in Class B2 to Ray Cunningham's similar car, 3 minutes down at the end. King had taken the air filter off for the final stage of the event, and the car ran a lot cleaner and quicker as a result. Although he was beaten by Cunningham on the Welsh stages, it proved that there's going to be a mighty battle between the Minis for the rest of the season. Representing the other side of the little and large show was the Volvo PV544 of Ian Beveridge. It was another good, solid run in the Swedish tank, and Beveridge was on target for second in Class B4 behind Gwilym Roberts and 7th overall. Once again, the car paid off with the obvious choice for historic rallying, but in the right hands and with the right preparer, it's a very quick car nonetheless. The Volvo may not be as glamorous as a Porsche, for example, but Paul Mankin was just happy to complete his Porsche experience, and at 8th place, all part, remember, of his learning process with the new German car, and a good solid finish was a very good result. John Everard's Alfa Romeo bagged 9th, despite an element of confusion during the course of the afternoon. Which way do the stages go? He worked out which way he should have gone at the junction, and thankfully didn't lose too much time. Once back on the right track, the Alfa was flying. A place in the top 10 was a good reward. And to round out the top 10 came Chris Toos. He would win Class B1 with the Singer Chamois, therefore the top imp competitor on the event, despite earlier delays. It'd be good to see the imps coming out in such numbers for the second round of the championship, and Toos' efforts to get into the top 10 was certainly impressive. The cheeky imp won its class from the rather larger Saab of Stephen Higgins. He took second in Class B1, and gone well all afternoon, but sadly was never able to make up for the time lost earlier on in the day. David Stokes took a resounding win in Category 2, a 48-second margin being the ultimate gap. He was quickest on 4 out of the 5 stages. He only lost out on that final test, and he was just 5 seconds slower than Stanley Orr on the final stage. Category 2 winner, Class D5 winner, the best of the BDA engine escorts in Category 2. Stokes had really stamped his mark on the event. How that's going to affect things in the championship, though, remains to be seen. His plan's unclear. It's likely we may see him for 1 or 2 more events, but not the whole season. For Stanley Orr, it had been a great run for second place. Fastest on that final stage. Remember, stages he doesn't know at all. And second in Category 2, also the winner of Class C3. Or another driver whose plans for the season aren't really clear as yet. The logistics of coming from Northern Ireland to do the championship are far from easy. Let's hope we see him back, because certainly on the Mid-Wales stages he had been very impressive indeed. For somebody who didn't know the stages, he treated them as though he were a veteran. Second was a very well-deserved result. Warren Philliskirk bagged third in the end, a long way adrift of Orr. He had, however, dropped time in Haffron when he stopped to check on Jonathan Brate, who rolled his escort. It was a sporting gesture from one driver to another. For Philliskirk, a place in the top 3 was a good reward for a solid day in the forests. Against the might of the Fords, Peter Smith was less than half a minute down on Warren Philliskirk in his opening scope, the only one of his time rallying in the UK. It was the sort of car that he used to rally in his youth. He was 4th overall and also won Class C3 by 45 seconds from Terry Cree in the BMW. Cree was 5th in Category 2 and 2nd in Class C3, ahead of a tight 3-way battle for position. Once again, he proved that the BMW is quick and strong and reliable, and the escorts. By the end of the event, just 25 seconds covered Cree, Steve Magson and David Kirby in their fight for 5th place in Category 2. 6th in category went to Steve Magson, along with 3rd in Class C3. He was just under 7 seconds ahead of David Kirby coming in the event after a very hard fight in the forests. Kirby was 7th in Category 2 and 4th in Class C3, having beaten Magson by just 0.6 of a second at the very first stage. Chris Nixon had a solid run to 9th, behind Simon Pickering and Colin Jenkins. The top 10 in Category 2 was rounded out by Robin Shuttleworth with his Ford Escort. He was also the winner of Class C2 for the 1600cc Category 2 cars. And as for Phil Jobson and Snowy, well, he was 11th in Category 2 and just happy to have got home after a clear run in the rebuilt Ford Escort.
Four, three, two, one. Go. Right 5, 40, left 4 plus, 40, left 4 over crest into don't cut right 1 tightens, and turn tight square right, 60, right 6 long and 100 down mid, and right 5 over crest, and left 4 plus 200 down mid. Left 5 plus 200. And late left 1 tightens. Late left 1 tightens. And right 2 into don't cut hairpin left. And square right left 3. Square right left 3. 80. Crest 60. Don't cut left into tight right 1. Tight right 1. 80. Right 4 into bad hairpin left. Bad hairpin left. Right 3 plus 60, left into crest and flat 200.
As shown on board, Nick Elliott was in fine form in Category 3, the Mark II Escort, heading for a 4th win here in 5 years. Nick very much the king of the mid-whale stages. He led the red kite stages by 28 seconds and then crashed on the last stage. So imagine how he felt with a 28-second lead here and despite a nervous run on the last stage, he won by 17 seconds in Category 3 and set up a title bid. The Cheltenham driver, once a rival to Richard Burns in the Peugeot Challenge, also won Class D5. Matt Robinson had a superb run on the last stage. He was fastest, he took 10 seconds off Elliott, he finished second overall in Category 3 and also second in class. It had been a great run all day, Matt finally matching speed with consistency. He'd also coped with the worsening weather towards the end of the day, but he didn't put a wheel wrong as he charged home for second spot. Behind him, Marion Evans was fourth fastest on the final stage of the event, and that put him third overall in Category 3 and in class as well. It was another very impressive drive for the historic rally rookie. It's his best result so far, very much one of the rising stars of the championship. He's been showing potential every time out. Here, it was definitely realised as Marion Evans bagged his best finish of his limited historic rallying career. A maiden win can't be far away. Behind the might of the Ford Escort Mark IIs came Owen Murphy, fourth in the Talbot Sunbeam Lotus. He was fifth fastest on the final stage, fourth in Category 3. His best result so far, the best result so far for the Sunbeam Lotus as well. There's more to come, and that should mean that Escort drivers everywhere have got to start fearing this car and driver combination. Period colours and driven as spectacularly as it would have been in the hands of Russell Brooks. It took the fans in a time warp back many a year as the car thundered on for fourth place. Richard Hill had a strong last stage to be second fastest on a day when the minute he lost early on in the day cost him dear. Had he not lost that time early in the event, he'd have been fighting for a podium finish. But the Red Kite Stages winner still leads the championship with 5 rounds to go. Behind Hill came Darren Moon. He was on target for 6th. He was 6th fastest on that last stage, as well as 6th overall in Category 3, having fallen behind Hill in the afternoon stages. Despite the time lost, it was still a very good performance by Darren Moon. And fair play as well to his new co-driver, Alan Walker. Drivers traditionally make very bad co-drivers, but the partnership worked extremely well. Whether they ever work together again, we'll have to see. In the Escort Mark II dominated Category 3, Thomas Davis was 7th. Just 2 seconds down on Darren Moon, but he dropped 8 seconds on the final stage of the event. That left Thomas Davis a frustrated 7th in Category 3. that his Ford Escort was quick and was there or thereabouts, but throughout the day he just lacked that ultimate pace to challenge for a podium. Gareth Lloyd's West Wales Rally Spares backed Escort had to overtake Tim Freeman on the very last stage after Freeman hit problems. That gave Lloyd 8th at the end of the day. With Freeman running behind him on the road towards the end of the last test, Lloyd pressed on as best he could for 8th overall, but he lost time early in the day, which perhaps affected him in the overall standings. Freeman equally frustrated, having lost time on that final stage. He put him 9th, ahead of Sean Rayner, who was 10th overall and won Class D3 by a huge margin. Jerry Bailey was 11th after a good, measured run. The aim here was always to finish, bearing in mind that he'd retired on the first stage of the event last year with electrical problems. The ghosts of last year well and truly exorcised. There was a huge sigh of relief at the end of the day. The Squires twins, Phil and Mick, took 12th overall and maintained their run of a finish on every round of the championship. It's a good job too, as Phil will celebrate his 50th birthday by taking the car to the Silver Fern Rally in New Zealand later in the year. Behind the Squires came Gareth Lewis, 2nd in Class D3, and he won his battle with Adrian Young by over half a... For Gareth, another driver new to the championship, it was another good result. And here's yet another name to bear in mind as the season goes on. Another driver showing bags of potential. Improved results are sure to come soon. Behind him, Adrian Young from South West Wales was happy to finish 3rd in Class D3 after a day with no dramas, despite the ever worsening weather. The stages in the afternoon were very slippery and very treacherous indeed. Remember, everybody with two-wheel drive. Adrian the figure, he mastered the conditions and brought the Escort Mark II home safe and sound. Ben Friend won the under-25s battle and was 4th in Class D3, level 2nd with Young. James State in the Talbot Sunbeam Lotus was 2nd in Class D4 behind the similar car of Owen Murphy. the Sunbeaming Works colours at least made it home. Graham Thatcher won Class D2 in his 1600cc Avenger to make up for a retirement on the first stage of the Red Kite stages, where the gearbox broke after just 3 miles. Nick Jarvis in his new Escort, first time out, was happy just to finish. Yes, they'd had problems, but the potential for the car was plain to see. John Baker and Sayan John had a decent run in Class D3 and were 5th behind Ben Friend. Another good result. His second rally on his comeback season after a 25-year absence. While Paul Fry wrapped up the Category 3 finishers after the 7-minute delay on the opening stage of the event cost him dear, but crucially he was there at the finish. And so, at the end of a challenging day in the forests, Category 1 was won by Ray Cunningham, with Willem Roberts coming home 2nd and Graham Waite 3rd ahead of Bob Gibbons, with Peter Stimson rounding out the top 5. Category 2 had been dominated all day by David Stokes. He triumphed over Stanley Orr and Warren Philliskirk, with 4th being Peter Smith and Terry Cree's BMW netting 5th. Nobody could touch Nick Elliott in Category 3, despite the best efforts of Matt Robinson or indeed Marion Evans. They were 2nd and 3rd ahead of Owen Murphy, while Richard Hill was 5th.
What a day, yeah, conditions. Very relieved to get here in one piece with the car not damaged, and to win as well is a special bonus after disappointment from a month ago on the Red Kite. Yeah, the thoughts going through the last stage, 28 seconds up, exactly the same as the last rally. I was very pleased when the finish line was there, put it that way. So I'm very relieved to be here now. Shame about the weather, but apart from that, yeah, it's worked out well for us today.
I think you've earned a beer tonight.
We've earned a beer tonight. Yes, it is. We needed a good result. We were so deflated, a month ago, but now, yeah, we're on a high, and roll on the next one. Hopefully in the other car again, which is a little bit better, and that will certainly help.
The Open category caters for two-wheel drive pre-87 cars that don't comply with historic regulations. An encouraging number of cars took part in the burgeoning category, and the future looks bright. Simon and Alistair Crook's Opel Manta that doesn't run with a period engine was the leading car home, with impressive stage times that would have put it in the top 10 against the Ford Escorts. Behind the Opel came Leighton Waters and Kevin Bocott's Toyota Starlet. That took second, despite being a couple of minutes adrift of the Opel. In fairness though, the car had lost its power steering during the course of the day, and that meant that life for Leighton became very physical indeed. Third was Geraint Davis, along with Chris Williams, Peugeot 205 GTI excelling on the slippery stages. Behind them came Dave Hemingway, along with Simon Ashton. They were fourth in the Escort Mark II, the Yorkshire crew not used to the Welsh stages. So honours for Simon Crook in the Opel Manta, Leighton Waters chasing him home with Geraint Davis third, and Dave Hemingway coming home in fourth. The Kumho Clubman's Challenge, the 6-tyre competition, is based on class points rather than overall finishing position. That meant the top scorer was Tom Coftrey, who ran 6 tyres and won Appendix K to score well. Behind him came later Walter Starlet, while Willem Roberts took 3rd after his class win at the Cortina. Another Category 1 class winner was Chris Toos. His Imp came home 4th in the Kumo Clubman's Challenge. And after a 2nd place in class, next up was Dave Hopkins. He was ahead of Tim Freeman, who deserves a very big cheer for taking the Ford Escort Mark II and running it on just 6 tyres and finishing in the top 10 in Category 3. Honours in the Kumo Clubman's Challenge to Tom Coftrey, ahead of Leighton Waters with Willem Roberts 3rd. Chris Toos 4th and Dave Hopkins rounding out the top 5. Another new innovation for 2014 is the Jeff Jones Motorsport Welsh Challenge. It's open to every driver, and it's based on the points scored across the Welsh events, 4 of them in the championship this year. And at the moment, it sounds like the start of a joke. It's the one about the Irishman, the Scotsman and the Welshman. After a Category 1 win, Ray Cunningham leads the championship. Behind him comes Tom Coftrey. The top Scot, he's 2nd in the Escort. And 3rd is where you find the top Welshman, that's Leighton Waters. Lying 4th is the 2nd of the Welshmen, Willem Roberts, with the Cortina. To look a long way down the leaderboard to find the top English driver. Eventually you do, in 5th, Ford Escort Mark II driver, Darren Moon. So Ray Cunningham leads the Jeff Jones Motorsport Welsh Challenge after the 2nd round of the series, ahead of Tom Coftrey and Leighton Waters. Willem Roberts 4th, Darren Moon 5th. So 2 rounds in to the West Wales Rally Spares RAC Rally Championship, and Richard Hill has a 7-point advantage over Ray Cunningham. Darren Moon is 3rd, ahead of Tom Coftrey, and then Leighton Waters is 5th. Outside the top 5, the battles continue. Willem Roberts just 1 point ahead of Nick Elliott. He's only 1 point up on Bob Gibbons. 2 points further back, Tom Davis and Peter Smith rounds out the top 10. That's it from Newtown after another great round of the West Wales Rally Spares RAC Rally Championship. Thanks to our TV partners at Sherwood Engines, Linwood Classic Engines, Swift Leisure, Robinson Road Planing, Jordan Surfacing, Rally Prep, Lloyd Thomas Opticians, Rally and Competition Equipment, Skipton Ford, Amigos and JD Garage Equipment. The next stop for the championship is the Tour of Hamsterley in County Durham in late April. Battle will recommence there. We'll see you for round 3 of the championship in a few weeks' time.